views expressed on this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers, and are not necessarily those of this station, its management, or other advertisers. You're listening to Transformation Talk Radio.
Voices of Women is a talk radio show that gives voice to the personal stories of women. It will inspire women and enlighten men to follow their dreams and create positive changes in their lives. Whether the audience listens to best-selling authors or a layperson like themselves, they'll realize there are others with similar experiences and feelings to their own. This show will give women tools they can use every day, which will empower them to step out of their boxes and create the changes they desire in their life. Kris inspires women to find their voices, speak up, and become leaders of their own life. Everyone has their gifts to share with the world, and it's time for women to work together to bring honor and respect to the feminine voice, which is within all people, men and women. Topics include personal growth, spirituality, creativity, leadership, and divine feminine. Now here's your host, Kris Steinnes.
Welcome to Voices of Women. I'm Kris Steinnes. I'm founder of Women of Wisdom Foundation. And I am excited today to talk to someone who is the author of The Lessons from a Difficult Person, How to Deal with People Like Us. So we're going to be talking about how to deal with difficult people, how to deal with yourself as a difficult person. And the author is Sarah Elliston. Sarah Elliston is an expert in this art of dealing with difficult people. She is a top workshop leader and a member of the faculty of the William Glasser Institute, which espouses reality therapy to foster behavioral change. For more than 30 years, she has been teaching and training, first as a high school teacher in Ohio and Cincinnati, and then as an administrator in the not-for-profit sector. She's now certified in values realization, parent effectiveness training, and reality therapy. So welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yes. Well, I would love for you to start by sharing your story, which would be around how you discovered that you were a difficult person.
It's so funny. I have a high school reunion coming up, and one of my classmates just sent me an email. Somebody in our class got nominated for an award, so we were all emailing back and forth, and she said, "Oh, by the way, I read your book, and oh my God, now I can see that I'm really difficult. It's just so much easier when I tell people that." It was like, okay, so lots of people read it and think that, but it never occurred to me that I was difficult to get along with, or what I think one man once called me high maintenance, and I just didn't get it at all. I didn't know what he meant. And I was 50 years old when I had a new boss, somebody that I really cared about, which is important. We had a good relationship, and I wanted to do well with her. And she respected me and complimented me on my work, and it was a good relationship. And one day she said, sort of almost in passing, "By the way, sometimes you have this annoying habit when you get frustrated or confused. You really," and she started to describe something, and I said, "I don't know what you're talking about." And she said, "Well, I'll tell you the next time you do it, okay?" And I said, "Sure." And about a couple of weeks later, I misplaced some glasses. Excuse me. They were brand new, and I'd never worn glasses before. They were reading glasses, and I spent much more money on them than I ever have since. But anyway, I couldn't find them. I tore my office apart, my purse apart, my coat apart, and I was stumbling around, stomping my feet and picking things up and dropping them, and just generally making a racket. And we were in a cubicle environment, so it was totally inappropriate. And she pulled me into her office and said, "What you're doing right now, that has to stop." And I said, "What am I doing?" And she was very clear. She specifically described my behavior. And, excuse me, other people have sort of called it a mini tantrum or something, but it was behavior that I had done all my life. And it didn't occur to me that people noticed. No one had ever spoken to me about it before that I really heard or that I recalled. I remembered, later, I remember my fifth grade teacher saying Sarah should learn to control her temper. And I used to get, on all my performance reviews, I would get comments like, all the good things that I do in my work, and I could work on my communication skills, which was the closest they could come to saying, sometimes you're argumentative and you interrupt and you're always angry and whatever. Defiant. They perceived me as being defiant, even though I wasn't aware that I was being defiant. So anyway, when she said that to me and said, we can't get our work done, I was stunned, and I said, oh, okay, I'll stop. And it started a process of real self-examination to sort of like, well, how come no one's ever told me about this? I called my husband. He said, oh, yeah, you do it all the time. And I talked to my son, and he said, oh, sure. We just got used to you. That's who you are. And it wasn't until I went to visit my mother, who was in her 80s, and living by herself because my father had recently died. And I watched her have a quiet little meltdown in the privacy of our room. I mean, I was the only other person in the room with her, and she went off on something, and she stomped out of the room in this rage, and I thought, oh, my God, that's what I was doing. The difference was that I did it out in the world, and she was taught, I guess, or anyway, the way she did it was that she only did it at home. But I began to see why nobody told me to stop when I was doing it as a child or growing up, because she wouldn't have noticed that it was inappropriate, I guess. I don't know. And what it led to then was for me to take a workshop that I was already doing on dealing with difficult volunteers. I started working at around dealing with difficult people. I really trying to understand why no one had really confronted me or, talked to me about it before this particular boss. And granted, this was an unusual situation in that we really got along well, and I really respected her. And she really respected me, so it was an easier conversation than maybe somebody else would have had. But I always got along with my bosses, so I just couldn't figure it out. So that I started doing this workshop, trying to get information from other people about what it was that got in the way. And it led to my identifying some procedures that people could do, some steps you can go through to really clearly see what the other person's doing that's driving you crazy, and then work yourself to a place of not quite neutrality, because you want to be in a support role, but instead of being in an antagonistic role and it's no longer a war, to come to a place where you can say, okay, look, we need to have a conversation. And if the other person, the difficult person, responds in a negative way, okay, that's fine, because I'm here in your corner because I know you don't know you're doing it. This is the key as far as I'm concerned, and I have yet to meet anyone who's worked with a difficult person who hasn't felt that the person being difficult is doing it on purpose in some way. That's who they are, that's the way they are, and it starts to become personal. And it also gets a lot of judgments. And so when I say to them, you know what? The difficult person doesn't know what they're doing, and they don't know their impact.
Yeah, I think that's more the key. They don't know the impact.
Or they really don't know what they're doing. Literally, in terms of changing, the irony is that we work on changing our thoughts and our feelings, and they're hard to change, but we can change what we do, and that will change our thoughts and our feelings. However, we don't really pay attention to what we do. I mean, we stand up, sit down, eat or not eat. We pay attention to that. But sometimes our word choice or walking by someone in the hallway at work without saying hello, just little things, we may not pay any attention to that. And then you get, if you are someone who's very focused and you're walking down the hall and you're going to get your work done and you don't stop and say, oh, hi, how are you doing, and have a chit-chat with everybody, then you get the reputation of being sort of cold and unfriendly. And, whoops, that wasn't your intent.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it impacts not only the other people around you, but it impacts yourself, because it impacts your relationships and being able to be close to people. People don't want to be around difficult people or high maintenance people. You're avoided, so that impacts.
Yeah.
Impacts
well,
you.
That's the other reason I did the workshop and wrote the book, was because I didn't think, if the difficult people out there are anything like me, they don't know what they're doing and they don't feel as close to others as they would like to. And there's a distance. And they don't know why it's there. I have a story about that it's a real simple little story, but I'll bet other difficult people would identify with it. And that is a colleague at work was getting married when I was teaching. And for some reason, I guess I assumed we were all invited because she talked about it all the time at work. And I remember saying to one of my other colleagues, what are you going to get so-and-so? And what are you going to wear to the wedding? And it became very clear as we talked that I wasn't invited. It wasn't, they didn't say it meanly. It's just like, well, the invitation said, or something like that. And I realized, oh, I didn't get an invitation. Okay, I'm not as good a friend to this person as I thought I was. And I have a feeling that there are more of those kinds of experiences with the difficult people, because, you get tired of someone that's always arguing or playing the devil's advocate or asking the difficult. I was always known for asking the difficult questions where I worked.
Yeah, and there's times where it's appropriate to, and some of it is how we do it, and all that. It impacts, and so and you look back like you were 50 years old when you finally came across this, and going, oh my goodness, all this time, if I'd known. And that's one of the things is, how do we confront? It's helpful to confront people about this, because you're doing them a service in a way. Well, we're going to take a break right now. We'll come back and talk more with Sarah Elliston on how to deal with having difficult people around you.
Gifted intuitive healer and spiritual teacher Sarah Luce brings her unique style to the hit show Small Steps, Big Breakthrough Radio on transformationtalkradio.com. Tune in each month as Sarah turns reality on end and shows us how to experience expansive results with simple yet powerful steps. Expect an enlightening bend on what you currently believe is possible. For show details and upcoming topics, visit sarahloos.com. That's SARALOOS.com.
Miss any shows during the week? Don't worry, we've got you covered. With the free Transformation Talk Radio app, you'll have access to all of the past week's shows in the palm of your hand. Tune in to Transformation Talk Radio anywhere you go with our free app for any of your devices. Check out our app in the App Store and Google Play Store today.
Are you ready for a game changer? Sarah Westall is bringing you Business Game Changers Radio. Sarah brings you leading experts, visionaries, and newsmakers who provide the best commentary on big issues and cutting-edge innovations. Sarah's 20 years as a business executive will help you think like an entrepreneur with expertise, energy, and attitude. Tune in to Business Game Changers Mondays at noon Pacific, 3 Eastern on transformationtalkradio.com.
To see your life from an angel's perspective, book a personal consultation with Claire Candy Huff, angelic walk-in angel Ariel at Angel Healing House. Candy provides intuitive counseling, Reiki, and angel readings in person in Los Angeles or nationally and internationally via phone or Skype. She will channel the practical tools you need to transform your life. Call now 831-277-3716 or visit angelhealinghouse.com.
When your body is awakened, your spirit comes alive. Dana Canetto is a transformational guide, embodiment coach, and spiritual mentor assisting women in realigning with their truth and embodying who they are by connecting to the wisdom of their body. Tune in every month on Transformation Talk Radio and the Dr. Pat Show Network for Body Divinity Radio with Dana Canetto. For more information on Dana and her services, visit danacanetto.com. That's DANACANNETO.com.
Kris Steinnes is a spiritual leader and healer and teaches a course on how you can transform your life through a meditation and healing system that will manifest your spirit's dreams. She manifested the Women of Wisdom Conference, the Women of Wisdom book, and this radio show. And she can show you how to change your life too. Are you ready? Visit the website and contact her at voicesofwomentoday.com. That's voicesofwomentoday.com.
Welcome back to Voices of Women. I'm Kris Steinnes, and I'm talking with Sarah Elliston. She has this book on lessons from a difficult person, how to deal with with people like us. Here I'm including myself. I think we all have everyone has their idiosyncrasies, and probably we could look at everybody and go, oh, that aspect of them is difficult, but some are more than others. Some are a little more high maintenance. And now here you were told by this, actually, it's a gift that your boss gave you. Unfortunately, you were 50 years old when you found out. How did it feel to find out that you were the difficult person?
I was stunned, mostly that, oh, my God, I've been doing this all my life. So I think I went through a period of feeling shamed, but then there was a little bit of anger, like, why didn't they tell me? I mean, the numbers of different people that I worked with. And I did a lot of self-examination. I talked to some therapists. I just tried to not get mad about it because it was having a little temper tantrum that brought it to my attention. But the other thing I learned, at least for me, was that people perceived me as being strong, independent, and very confident. So when I would ask a question, if that person was someone in authority, they felt threatened, and it took me a long time to understand that. It never occurred to me that they didn't appreciate the question, especially when I worked for folks, at a high leadership level that said, "Oh, please ask questions," and then I would, and then I'd get on my performance review. You don't always have to ask the boss the questions, but. So part of it was naivete, and part of it was because maybe my question had some validity, that the person in the leadership role, there was a little bit of a tinge for that person, like, oops, she's sort of challenging your authority here, which was never my intent. And it was one of the things that I learned as I went back over the different relationships that I'd had in the working world. The irony for me was, at least in my experience, my customers, for the most part, were external to the United Way. They were all volunteer coordinators in the community, or I also ran a volunteer program at City Hall. And they responded positively. I didn't get negative feedback from them. But within my family, if you will, colleagues that I worked with, it wasn't, that's where I began to see that I was perceived as being difficult. And part of it was their perception that I was challenging authority. And I was brought up to challenge authority, but it was not my intent to challenge it in a way of being rude. I thought I was just asking a question. But because of my genetics, if you will, because I didn't learn to act confident, and I didn't learn. All of members of my family are teachers. It's genetic. I can't help it. So we all sound like we know what we're talking about. And people just assume that, oh, well, they know what they're talking about. And so part of it was perception, and that's the other piece of it is in inviting people to have a conversation. I like to call it a conversation and not a confrontation, because confronting suggests there's adversarial relationship. And if you're developing conversation, the first step, of course, is they don't know what they're doing. They don't know the impact that they're having on you or the team or the clients or the family or whoever it is. If it's just on you, then it's just a simple conversation. And usually if it needs to have more of a impact than that, especially at work, I think, because sometimes people become defensive and say, well, you need to work on that if that's a problem for you. This is who I am. So the impact needs to be stronger than this is the impact on me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I was thinking, because here we're asking women to be stronger and get their voices out there, and there's a lot of learning how to do that, because there's the other end of it. How's it being received? Now, when you're talking a boss or somebody with higher authority, and you're asking questions, which I think workers have a right to, it's also their issue of dealing with their insecurities. And,
sure
that line of not taking care of them because they're feeling insecure because you're questioning them. And yet, if you're aware of that, then you can approach them in a way that's a little understanding of that they're the boss, and coaching it in a different way where it's a suggestion and not threatening them. But that's a real art to learn how to do that, and without taking care of them, because they also, there is the other equation of their issues. Always is in a relationship, isn't there?
Sure. I think I like to think that because I was a teacher for 10 years, I was in charge of my classroom, and I didn't have any difficulties with my colleagues, the other teachers. So, but when you're in charge of your classroom, you're in charge. And when I took parent effectiveness training and then I started teaching it, one of the groups we also shared that skill set with was teachers. And I found that teachers were the toughest group to do a workshop with because they all knew everything. I began to realize that as I look back on it now, I see that the training that I had was, well, you do know everything because you're in charge of your classroom.
Yeah, and you have to take control of the classroom.
Well, that, plus you need to have all the information, and you have to have lesson plans and do all the stuff. So then when you move into a structured sort of corporate environment, you haven't had any training on how to talk to the boss. or how to, and I didn't have any training anyway. So I see the dilemma between being assertive and speaking out as women, and some hosts have said, well, aren't you just, didn't they just call you difficult because you were, a woman with ideas and confidence? And I don't think so. I think there was a tone of probably defiance for me, and maybe resentment that I didn't even know was there, So I think some people, and they're male or female, but maybe mostly women, who get so frustrated that it's difficult to step back and take a deep breath and interact with, say, a supervisor or a colleague who is male, who is clearly putting you down, and not want to just slap him, and not want to put him down yourself. I have watched this process of men learning about sexism. I shared an office at City Hall with a man who was a really nice guy. He was about 15 years older than I was, and we were going to all these workshops and trainings for city employees around sexual harassment in the workplace, and he just didn't get it. He was intelligent, college-educated, nice man, and he couldn't understand what the women were going through. He didn't get it. And he honestly asked questions all the time. Why would they resent this? My wife likes this, and it was a generational thing. Well, who knows? Yeah. But it was generational as well as just finally people are talking about this. So it's possible that hopefully women will be able to have these conversations with men. But what I wanted to say was, for the people who didn't talk to me, they were afraid of my probably erupting in defiance or anger or whatever. And so for readers or listeners in this case who have difficult people in their lives, what I would want to say is you need to change how you react to people before you can change how you interact with them. And so identifying that they don't know what they're doing, they don't really know the impact, they may not know the consequences of not changing. They may not realize that there are consequences to what they're doing because they're not aware of what they're doing. And then you need to be able to look at them as not the enemy. And so the book is a series of, it's a little bit my story, but it's a lot of exercises, self-guided exercises that people can do to really examine themselves as well as how they're looking at the other person. One of my favorites is making a list of all the words we use to describe difficult people, like controlling and narcissistic and manipulative, and you name it. We've got lots of them, right? And I like taking that list and then saying, all right, how would you describe the behavior? When someone says that to me, somebody called in once on one of the radio shows that I did, and they said, well, my colleague is manipulative is not the word she used, but she said, well, is manipulative, something like that. And my response was, and what did it look like? What did it sound like? So you get really concrete about it. Then you can take all that angst out of it. You can take the hostility out of it, and you can look at, this person says this and is doing that, and it's driving us all crazy because of whatever. We can't get our work done, or it's racist, or it's sexist, or whatever, and it pollutes the environment. If you can do the exercises and get yourself into looking at the difficult person as not the enemy, somebody that you want to support, then you can have the conversation. And actually, I have dialogues in the book that are examples of some of the conversations people have had in people that have come to my workshops. And then at the end, I actually have a little outline, like it could go this way. It probably doesn't go that way perfectly, but I also do coaching with people over the phone, a couple of conversations around their issues to help them with having the conversation. I think people probably tried to tell me. I know that I remember one conversation where a woman said, well, when you said that, it made me feel like this. And my reaction was, I said, I'm sorry you feel that way. Are you expecting me to do something to make you feel differently?
And I need to interrupt you right now. We'll continue this. I have to take a break, so we'll continue the story when we come back after the commercial.
Do you feel that there's a bigger, better life for you? Is there anything holding you back from living the life you were meant to live? If you'd like to find your life's true purpose and calling, join the world's foremost authority on primal spirituality, David Carshare, in Becoming a Sun Radio, emotional and spiritual intelligence for a happy, fulfilling life. Tune in once a month to Becoming a Sun Radio with David Carshare on The Dr. Pat Show and Transformation Talk Radio. For more information, visit davidcarshare.com today.
Are you traveling most of your day? Do you want to take Transformation Talk Radio with you anywhere you go? Well, guess what? There's an app for that. Just go to the App Store on your Apple device or the Google Play Store on your Android and search Transformation Talk Radio. Catch all of our live shows no matter where you are. Thanks for listening.
If
If you're dealing with fear and anxiety, you've probably noticed that the more you fight these emotions, the stronger they seem to get. Dr. Friedemann Schaub, the author of The Fear and Anxiety Solution, explains that instead of suppressing, we need to identify and resolve the deeper, subconscious root causes of fear and anxiety. His personal breakthrough program has helped thousands worldwide to overcome their emotional challenges. To learn more, visit thefearandanxietysolution.com and schedule your free consultation with Dr. Schaub now.
Tune in to the hit show Masters Chambers with your trusted friend Connie Fife. Mondays, 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern on transformationtalkradio.com. Each week, Connie will connect you with the best of the best thought leaders from around the globe to share their strategies and best practices. Getting better together. To book Connie, visit ConnieFifeSpeaks.com.
Be you plus live your purpose equals joy. That's the motto of Unstuck Joy with Vicki Todd. Vicki believes you were born with gifts that are meant to make the world brighter. Each show will feature an art visioning journal prompt to help you create your way to soul clarity. If you're ready to get unstuck and create more joy, this show is for you. Tune in every month on Transformation Talk Radio. For more information, visit VickiWorldArt.com.
Kris Steinnes is a spiritual leader and healer and teaches a course on how you can transform your life through a meditation and healing system that will manifest your spirit's dreams. She manifested the Women of Wisdom Conference, the Women of Wisdom book, and this radio show. And she can show you how to change your life too. Are you ready? Visit the website and contact her at voicesofwomentoday.com. That's voicesofwomentoday.com.
Welcome back to Voices of Women. I'm Kris Steinnes, and we're talking with Sarah Elliston about dealing with difficult people. So, Sarah, you were just finishing up a story. You know, someone was trying to tell you were being difficult, but the way she said it, you couldn't hear it. And we have that response to that. So, you know, you were sharing how. So, our response is it makes us feel a certain way when someone is sort of accusing us of being difficult, and you can't hear it. You know, how do you respond to that?
I wasn't very nice. I was probably very difficult. She said, when you said that, it made me feel this way. And I said, I'm sorry you feel that way. I didn't say I'm not responsible for your feelings, but that's what I was thinking. Because I can't make anybody feel anything. They get to choose what they're feeling. And she kept saying it over and over, and I think I finally said something to her about, she sort of pulled me off to one side in a meeting that we were in, and it was after the meeting, and I said, are you expecting me to say something different? Are you asking me to change because you're not feeling happy about something I said because it hurt your feelings? I mean, shouldn't you be exploring why it hurts your feelings? Now, that, you know, we ended that relationship, obviously. She wasn't a close friend. And I felt that she spent a lot of time looking to other people to figure out what she was supposed to do. So I had my own opinions about her. And what I said wasn't inaccurate, but it wasn't very nice. And I could have said it in a different way. Mm-hmm. So that was one person that I remember from my life who's tried to say, gee, when you do that. If she had come up to me and she said, when you ask that question, this is one colleague did this, when you ask me lots of questions in front of all the people in that big meeting, and you keep asking me questions about the topic, I began to wonder if you were trying to make me look bad in front of my boss. And my reaction was, oh my God, it was the last thing I wanted to do. I was really interested in your topic, and I knew a little bit about it, and I am so sorry if it made you uncomfortable. Well, she worked for someone who would perceive lots of questions like that as that in some way she was deficient. I never worked for anybody like that, so it was the last thing on my mind. But I learned not to pepper someone with a lot of questions. And actually, a couple of weeks later, I was teaching a class, and there was someone in the class who kept asking questions. And there were usually 15 or 20 people in a class at that time. And I remember thinking, oh, for Pete's sake, get over it. And then I realized she really was interested. And so I switched and said, I really appreciate all your interest. And it changed the whole way I felt about her. And she stopped asking so many questions. I also spoke to her at the break. When you're leading a group, you can say, let's keep moving, but let's talk at the break so I can answer more of your quesquestions.
Yeah, there's ways to learn how to deal with, thank you for your input, and can we hear from some other people? So, because there is always in a group that sort of person that's dominant, that kind of, dominates the conversation. But I think, too, what you're saying in dealing with this is to not be blaming, like, say you're the difficult person and I want to confront you, often is like, you did this and you did this to me, versus this is how I feel. To share, for a person to share, this is how it impacts me, this is what I feel when you said that, this is what I feel, then you're taking responsibility for what you felt and not all the blames on all the other person.
Right. And there should be no blame anyway, because it's just your feeling. If you say, when you said that or you did that, I felt uncomfortable, and I noticed that a lot of other people did too, and they might not tell you that, or you might not know that. We had a guy at the church when I worked. He talked about somebody who's a man who was absent, and said, well, I spoke to his better half today, and she said he's fine. And one of my colleagues just said, oh, for God's sakes, get over that old language. And he was completely puzzled. He didn't know what she was talking about. And she said, when you talk about women as being the man's better half, it's sort of like using the N-word when you're talking about black people. And he got it. Mm-hmm. So we didn't have a big mess. But so she was able to explain it to him. But my point is that just saying, when you say that or do that, it makes me feel something. It's like, that's the first step. The rest of it is, part of the conversation is, did you know that you're doing it? Do you know it has this impact, and is that what you want? Because clearly they don't. None of us want to make other people uncomfortable or unhappy or distanced. And when we give them the choice, do you know you're doing it? And is that what you want? Do you know you're doing it? And do you know it has this impact? And is that really what you want? I'll bet it isn't. I mean, I don't think you wake up every morning wanting to irritate everybody or irritate the clients or whoever. But it's happening. And I just wondered if you knew that you were doing it and if that's what you want. And it's a longer conversation. You can't just do it in 3 minutes. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of the thrust of it, rather than saying, when you do this, it has this impact, and expecting them to change or care. Unless, it's the boss, in which case, in my case, when she said, this needs to change, I did have to say to her, I don't know what you're talking about. What am I doing? And she had to describe my behavior very concretely. And I thought, oh, my God, she's right. I am doing all that. I had no clue that anyone even noticed me. I was totally wrapped up in my little hurricane and my emotional whatever I was having. And I think a lot of difficult people just, they're not aware. For me anyway, I felt not blind. Whatever the word is, where you're covered up. I can't find the right word. So, but I just didn't think people noticed me at all, which is was the opposite, actually.
Yeah, well, you're a strong voice, and you had opinions, and you were a teacher, so you knew how to, speak up, and sometimes that's hard for other people to take. But let's get into one, because you mentioned it before about visiting your mother, and so. Let's talk about what you think the cause of you being difficult came from, because a lot of things we learn from our childhood, or our models are our parents. And so we learn these things, and then we go out into the world and we go, oh my goodness, I haven't been taught social skills when we're an adult,
Right. Well, or this particular one I missed. When my husband and I got married, we were on our halfway through our honeymoon, we stopped at home or something. I just remember my husband telling me as we left my parents' house that my dad had taken him aside and said, you know, when the girls get into these little snips, and sort of now I realize he was coaching him to don't pay any attention when they have a temper tantrum, when Sarah has a temper tantrum, because it's just what they do, because it's what my mother did. For me, the way I perceived my relationships with my two sisters growing up was that I was excluded, and they were always playing together, and they didn't want me, and my sister was mean, and that's the way I perceived it. What we discovered as adults was their perception was that my mother and father spent all the time trying to figure out how to make Sarah happy, what to do about Sarah. So if we lived in New England, and we went skiing every weekend almost to New Hampshire, and if I couldn't sit at a window, I wouldn't get in the car. I wouldn't sit in the middle of the seat, and there are three of us across the back seat, right? And so my mom would find places for me to go. Also, I like to sing in the choir, so I didn't always want to go skiing with them. But their perception was that my mom spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to keep Sarah happy, whereas my two sisters seemed to be happy all the time, and they might not have been. I wasn't aware of that. My reaction was it was 2 against 1. So I kind of went through life with my fists raised, you know, and expecting when someone made a comment, expecting them to then have a bite. I still work on that sometimes. Even now, I still have to say to myself that my older sister is, when I pretend she's someone else's older sister, no problem. When she's mine, it's like she's always criticizing me, and she probably isn't, but that's the way it feels. So,
yeah, because we hear this voice in our head, and you know, even it's from our childhood, and then we move on to other people. If we hear that same voice, we jump right to that. It's our pattern.
And if the new people in our lives don't know about it, it can be surprising. I think it is definitely a pattern, and I think it takes a concentrated effort to change. And what I've found is every time I think, okay, I've got a handle on this, then another little layer of the onion comes off. And when I was writing the book, I felt really clear that this was my perception of my childhood. I wasn't blaming anybody. I wasn't a victim. It's just the way I experienced it. And then, 3 months later, I had a meltdown. It was personal, but I realized that I'd been hearing her voice in my head. And I thought, wait a minute, I thought I figured that all out. I thought I understood it, and it doesn't. I think it takes a lot of work. So. Well,
and it's good to, it takes awareness and to recognize. So you did recognize it. But, and so it's just, we have to be gentle with ourselves and like, okay, I missed it this time. Next time, I'll do something different. So, and then we have that, then we also deal with, we have this we've been labeled a difficult person. So how do you get out of that labeling? Because people expect you to be difficult.
It's what's funny, of course, is that now that I've written this book, I say, actually, for probably the last 10 years, I've worked pretty hard at checking things out. Somebody sent me a St. Patrick's Day card that was very loving, and I had just sent her some sort of negative email about, honestly, why does anybody care about St. Patrick's Day anyway? I didn't grow up Catholic or Irish, so I just threw that comment away, and then I get this loving card from her, and I instantly picked up the phone and said, I didn't mean anything that, are we okay? Because obviously this is an important day for you. And so I do that now. I check it out.
Yeah, that's
sure
good.
Having I said.
Yeah, having that curiosity and asking instead of making assumptions. Well, we have to take another break. We have to take another break. Sorry, I have to interrupt again.
No problem.
We'll come back and talk more with Sarah Elliston.
Tune in to Dynamics of Diversity Radio, scripting the new narrative for immigration with leading experts Kripa Upadhyay and Steve Tanijo on transformationtalkradio.com. This show will remove the noise that often accompanies discussions on this topic and share a new perspective on the dynamics of immigration and diversity, ever reminding us that together we are all at the core of innovation, excellence, and positive change. Visit orbitlawpllc.com for upcoming topics.
How would you like to release your stress and let go of your anxiety, fear, depression, or even physical pain? How would you like to feel more relaxed, more confident, and experience more success in all areas of your life? Dave Dodge from Stress Buster Radio has a number of cutting-edge methods that will help you do just that. For more information on how Dave can help you release stress, visit StressBusterRadio.com. Skype and phone sessions available.
Tune in to Mainstream Metaphysics Radio to harness your connection with the universe to effect change for optimal success and happiness. Named one of the country's top psychics, Eve now brings her insights and gifts to this weekly hit call-in show, joined by visionaries, leaders, and gifted others, but mostly you. Jot it down, Thursdays, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern on TransformationTalkRadio.com.
How would you like increased health and vitality? How would you like to avoid the onset of disease as well as slow the aging process? This is all possible through a simple, safe, and natural process. Every day we are either moving toward wellness or away from wellness.
Hi, I'm Mary Jane Mack. I'd like to be your partner in achieving optimal health. Contact me now at maryjanemack.com or call 425-392-0659. Visit maryjanemack.com.
Kris Steinnes is a spiritual leader and healer and teaches a course on how you can transform your life through a meditation and healing system that will manifest your spirit's dreams. She manifested the Women of Wisdom Conference, the Women of Wisdom book, and this radio show. And she can show you how to change your life too. Are you ready? Visit the website and contact her at voicesofwomentoday.com. That's voicesofwomentoday.com.
Sky Siegel co-hosts one of today's most popular psychic shows, Angels and Answers with Artie Hoffman, as she communicates healing messages from the spirit world. These messages can be astounding, enlightening, and life-changing. Born with the God-given talent of inner guidance and the amazing ability to heal, Sky has healed thousands of people. Schedule a reading with Sky now. Call 908-500-1474 and visit skyofangels.com.
Welcome back to Voices of Women. I'm Kris Steinnes, and we're talking about how to deal with difficult people with Sarah Elliston. So, Sarah, first, before we get back into what you were sharing, please give your website and any information about that you want people to know about. If you're doing any trainings or workshops or.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'd love to. My website is my name, SarahElliston.com, and Sarah has an H. So it's SARAH Elliston, as it sounds, .com. And when you go to the website, you can buy the book there. It'll take you right to Amazon. There's information about me. It talks a little bit about the kinds of workshops that I do. I'm just scheduling one now for a spring class here at the Unity Church in Cincinnati. But I have gone to other communities when invited and done workshops. I also do coaching, as I said, over the phone with people who focused more on work relationships. I can certainly talk to people around their family relationships or marital relationships, but usually that requires a little counseling, and I'm not a licensed counselor, so I find that I'm more effective helping people resolve work relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that impacts us a lot. We all deal with, that's usually where, well, other than family and our husbands or kids or stuff, but, dealing with work people is because there's such a variety of people at work, different personalities all coming together. So it is I haven't been in corporate world for a long time, maybe because of that, and other reasons. But so you were talking about, I think as a difficult person, there's maybe things people can do to help people recognize that or to deal with you or be kinder to you? How do you approach that? So that, go,
well,
okay, raise your hand. I'm a difficult person, everybody. So
yeah, right. Well, for me, I was quite surprised after I wrote the book, and my friends started reading it, and various ones of them would say to me, wow, I hadn't realized that I was a difficult person. Now I understand what my kids have been saying to me all these years. And I was stunned because I wrote the book to help people have a conversation with a difficult person, to find their way of looking at the difficult person, to change the way they were looking at them so they could have a conversation so that the difficult person could learn about their behavior without using the word difficult necessarily, just to say, when you do this, it has this impact. Did you know that? Did you know you did it? And is that what you want? Over a period, over a conversation, not just bam, 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 like that. So the whole purpose of writing it was to help those of you who aren't difficult talk to people like us who are difficult in a way that would be effective, that will actually lead to some significant change, because it's not confronting, it's having a conversation. For me now in my life, I check it out all the time, as I said, but I'll say, well, now maybe I'm being difficult here, but this is what I want to say. Is it inappropriate? And so I'm very open about being difficult. I think I've always been a teacher who didn't need to know all the answers, even though it sounds like I know all the answers, but I'm very willing to say, I don't know, let's look it up. Of course, now we have Google, so we usually can look it up. But as I said, when we first started today, one of my classmates just wrote me, I just read it a few minutes ago, about she had read my book and realized that she had been difficult in various places. So I don't know if that answers your question.
But it's just, you can, although I don't know. You can kind of let people let me know if I'm being difficult here, or that you have that tendency, and then people can barely cut you slack, I think is what you're saying. Like, oh, okay, no, you're fine, or whatever. But there's also, it feels like sort of like setting yourself up that, okay, I could be difficult here, even though you're informing people, and then they're going to, they could even, I wonder if you ever come across that they could even jump to think, oh, here's a difficult person, I don't want to deal with you.
Hasn't happened.
Okay.
That hasn't happened to me, but I haven't walked around in the world of people I don't know and said that. I'm sure others would. Mm-hmm. In the interactions that I've had with, people that are hiring me to do workshops, and people that I'm doing coaching with, and my friends, that has not happened. In terms of asking them to cut me some slack, what I'm really doing is saying, give me feedback. Mm-hmm. When I say I may be being difficult, is this inappropriate to ask here? Or am I saying something that is offensive to you? I'm really asking for help. And people are more willing to give help, and it's more of a comfortable relationship than being offended and not wanting to talk or be part of whatever it is we're doing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm not really using it as an excuse. I'm just saying, hey, this is who I am, I'm afraid, and I'm trying not to be. But sometimes it sneaks out.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things you talk about is being in someone's business. And sometimes we sort of get involved in, we take on other people's business that we don't have any right to be in, or it's not our business. I heard it on the TV one night. It's like, living their life like, it's not my business, to get involved in other people's business. That's not my life.
It's really interesting. I've first heard that expression from a woman named Byron Katie. I don't know if you know her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She does the work, and she has these three concepts. So there's my business, which is everything about me, and there's your business, which is everything about you, and then everything else is God's business. And the only thing I have any control over is mine. And I'll tell you what, almost 90% of the time, the family issues that I bump into, it's not always true, but so many times, people just want the other person to be different. It's not, they can't even identify the impact on them. It just makes them so mad. And when we want someone else to be different just because we want them to be different, we're in their business. And it is really frustrating and hard to get out of it. But it's what we need to do if we want to have peace in our relationships. Because if we're trying to tell other people what to do all the time because we think they should do it, we think it's best for them, it creates all kinds of problems. So this whole concept of being in your own business, it's one of the exercises in the book, is to stop and determine whether indeed the behavior of your difficult person isn't just irritating the heck out of you and has no impact on anybody else, in which case probably you need to work on what's going on with you, which none of us really like to think about. So is the other.
But those are important questions to ask, though, because you are having a reaction, and it's to look at when we're reacting to something. Why am I reacting? What's triggering me? Because that can be more about me than the other person, and that's all part of our growth too.
I think our culture is one where everybody wants to blame somebody else. I can't tell you how many times I see this, like, well, that wasn't my fault. I mean, I like lawyers. I'm not an anti-lawyer, but maybe it's because we've had so many lawyers, we have so many lawsuits that everybody's always arguing with somebody else, and it's not my fault, it's their fault, and they owe me. And I look around and I just feel like, wow, no one's taking responsibility for their own behavior. Well, some people are, but it feels like, at least in our culture today, in our country, that responsibility is not being taken for what people are doing. And this culture has been created, over the last however many years.
Yeah. So it's up to do our own personal work and change that within ourselves. Well, we have to close the show now. Thank you so much for being on the show, Sarah.
Oh, you're welcome. I really enjoyed being here. Thanks for your questions and your interest.
Yeah. Well, everybody can check out her book and information on her website, Sarah with an H, EllistonThe.com. So this is Kris Steinnes. I'm the founder of Women of Wisdom Foundation, also author of the Amazon bestseller and award-winning book, Women of Wisdom, Empowering the Dreams and Spirit of Women. So that's the inspirational book on the divine feminine and the many voices and expressions of her, of art and poetry and stories in that book. And so I would love for you to check it out. And so we're at the end of our show, and I hope everybody has a great weekend, and we'll be back next week, Fridays at 1 o'clock Pacific time.
You've been listening to Voices of Women with Kris Steinnes. Tune in each Friday at 1 p.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. Eastern time for Voices of Women Today, radio with Kris Steinnes.